Hi everyone, welcome to my beginners floral series. So I'm going to do about 6 to 8 beginners florals to start with, going through different floral subjects in a small scale, nice and easy. So nice, simple, effective techniques for you to learn and build on. In the same way as my super easy beginners playlist, I want you to capture different skills every single time and build on them. So I'm going to stick with 4 colours, and those 4 colours are going to be Gamboge Hue, Permanent Rose or Rose Madder, Cobalt Blue and Burnt Sienna. And I'm going to work those 4 colours to show you how you can get the colours to achieve for all of these florals. So please do join me. The first one today is Primroses. Okay, so we're going to start by drawing out the flowers. Now I'm showing you the drawing because as a beginner it can be quite hard to get everything right. So I'm going to keep this really simple. We've got a nice small bit of paper. I'm going to come in and draw out a few primroses. So I started with the centre. I'm going to work my way around and create some petals. So this first one, I'm going to keep it dead centre on. So you're seeing this dead centre. You've got the centre there. The next one, I'm going to slant a bit. Now to make that easier, if I put an ellipse in at an angle and then I pop the centre within that. So what you will see, this is circular perspective, is this side here is bigger than this side because it's slanting away. So then as I start to come in, I'm going to stick to that ellipse line but come round and pop in the primrose petals. So this side, they're much smaller. So this is helping you, it's a guide mark that's helping you get that circular perspective. So you can see now that that is angled a different way. And then things work better in odds. And so we're going to stick another flower in. And I'm going to do one here. And then the other thing we're going to talk about is overlapping, because overlapping happens a lot and it makes it work much better with flowers. So I'm going to put in a bit of a guide mark here. You can always do guide marks, I think they're really useful. But this one is coming over this one, so this is going to put this a little bit more in shadow. And then coming around, they've always usually got about 6 petals. Some are 5, depends on the variety. We're not hugely bothered about the variety of primrose, we're just having a go at them. And then I'm going to pop in some primrose leaves. Now they're quite a strange shape. It's quite a forgiving shape really. So I'm going to pop some in. Some to come off the page. And we've got a nice drawing there. So colours wise, I've got the colours squirted in the centre of the palette. I'm going to use a wash brush just to squirt about half a teaspoon of water into a couple of wells. These colours I'm going to use through the whole of this beginners series so that you're getting used to this 4 limited colours. So this one, these are all common. This is called Gamboge Hue. It looks a lot like raw sienna when it's squirted out, but when it's watered down it's a lovely transparent yellow. So I've got that one. I have got Cobalt Blue. So I'm taking about a pea-sized blob. This is my round number 10 brush. It's the one I tend to use for mixing. And I want these colours to be consistent because we're going to come in with a wet and wet wash. We don't want them fighting against one another. Then I have got Rose Madder. So if you haven't got any of these colours, I want you to use what you've got. So for gambos, you could use a cadmium yellow, you could use a lemon yellow, you could use a quinachrome gold colour. It all depends what you've got. This is Rose Madder. You could use permanent rose, you could use alizarin crimson. Some of them will be more muted. You could even use cadmium red. The cobalt, you could use ultramarine quite easily as well. The last one that I've got is burnt sienna. And I'm going to take a blob of that. I've only got a tiny bit of water. I want this to be thicker. And then I'm going to take a blob of the blue in. So I've got the burnt sienna and the blue. That's going to make a bit of a grey. And then I'm going to warm that up with a bit of the Rose Madder. So this is giving me a dark to use within here. Not quite warm enough. So I'm just taking bit by bit over. There we go. So that's like a nice muted purpley grey. So that's going to work lovely. So I'm going to continue now with my wash brush. And I'm going to come on and wet the paper. So this is cotton paper, it's Saunders Waterford. I've got quite a small piece here. I've taken a 1/4 inch imperial piece down into 4. So it's nice and manageable when you're learning wetting wet. I'm going to get as close to the primrose flowers as I can. I'm coming round twice to get plenty of water on. I want a sheen. I don't want puddles. If you're using a wood pulp paper, you can get less water on. You just need to move a bit quicker. So that's my water on. I'm picking up my round number 10. Just checking it's clean because the last colour that I mixed was that grey. And I'm going to come in with the yellow first of all. So I'm dabbing it on. I'm going to get into the edges of the flowers so that they start to get a nice petal edge. What I'm doing is mixing colour on the paper. Mixing colour on the paper gives much more vibrancy. You have to have a little bit of forward thinking so you don't end up with brown everywhere though. So I'm coming in with a little bit of Rose Madder now. Where it's dry, it won't run, so you know you're protecting your flowers by keeping them dry. Use the tip of the brush to get in and get really, really close. Little bits of Rose Madder work great for tonal bits within the leaves. Then I'm going to come on with the blue. Now as I'm doing this, I'm thinking a lot about where the leaves are, so that I start to get some colour happening within here. If when you're coming on it looks quite blue, do not worry, because you can take a little bit more. As it settles, you can take a little bit more of the yellow in. Bring some more within and around the flowers. I'm going to swap down to a number 6, just so I can get into really close into near these flowers. Some of these bits are dry and I'm just taking the paint in. The nicer the edge you can get on these flowers now, the better it will work later. So it's worth taking the time. And it's still nice and wet. So I've still got plenty of time. And you're also letting those other colours settle a little bit before you start dabbing in too much with the blue and the yellow. Okay, so I'm going to come into this dark colour. Going to give it a little bit of a mix first, and I'm still with my number 6. We're going to get into these darker areas. So now where you're putting this dark will really help to make these flowers pop out. What I don't want you to do is come all the way around the edge. I want you to just do little bits. Otherwise it looks like you've outlined it. We don't want that. We want little bits. Nice and dark within that centre, because it would naturally be nice and dark within there. Okay, so I'm just looking now to see if I want to add a little bit more yellow. So I'm just bringing a little bit more yellow back into where those leaves are. It's quite nice because you just basically getting tonal bits, and that's going to work next with that next layer. Okay, I'm going to take a tiny little bit more dark just in here a little bit. So this is just going to bring out that leaf against there. So I'm painting some dark within, really. And then I've got some salt, normal table salt. So a great way of getting the primrose leaf's texture is to sprinkle a little bit of salt. So I'm taking a tiny little bit and being quite specific with it and getting it onto those front leaves. So this one and this one, I'll do it in 3s. I'll pop some there as well. I'm not going to go right the way into the background because they don't need as much texture. And then I'm just going to wait for that to dry, and the salt should do its thing. Okay, so that's nicely dry now, and I've just rubbed the salt off. What you'll see, you might need to expand up a little bit so you can see this is a very delicate salt effect. So sometimes salt works really quite sharply, sometimes it's quite delicate. This time, because the colours have been quite pale, it's meant that it's a delicate effect, but it will still work as texture within those leaves. So I'm going to go on now to do a second layer on this sort of background area before we go on to the flowers. I'm keeping in mind that I want to keep this really simple for you as a beginner's introduction to flowers, because they can get very complicated. So I'm going to talk about negative painting now. So negative painting is something that should come into everybody's work, and it's quite a hard thing to grasp. What you are doing is you are painting the background to bring out something in the foreground. Now, the easiest way to explain this is for me to paint some leaves and bring out the leaves in front. So I have got a dab of the gamboge yellow and a dab of the cobalt blue together. I'll get my little bit of a tester. Okay, so that's quite pale. I want it a bit stronger than that. So I'm going to take some of the neat gamboge yellow in. That's a bit yellow. So it's good to test your colours. Even as an experienced artist, I'm testing to get a really nice colour. I'm going to take a tiny touch of burnt sienna in. Now that is to make it look more of a natural green. A bit of brown will make it look more natural. So that's a much more natural green there. Okay, rinse that out. That's my round number 10 I've mixed with. So this is a leaf that I've already created. I'm going to paint a leaf underneath each of these to bring that leaf out. So I've wet with my round number 10. And then I'm going to bring in this green. This is with my round number 6. and I'm focusing on getting a nice edge on each of these leaves. So this background leaf is going to bring out this foreground leaf, but I'm not actually painting that leaf. That leaf's already been painted. So that's the green going in, and then I'm going to dip into our darker mix and just add a little bit of that in there. I'm going to do the same here. So a bit of water, rinse that brush out, dab it off. You should always dab your brush off if you've got your colours ready mixed, because you don't want to dilute them anymore. Kitchen towel's a wonderful thing. And again, I'm focusing on getting the edge nice. So now that leaf is formed without me actually needing to paint it. What I've done is I've painted the background to bring out a foreground leaf. That is the simplest form of negative painting. I'm going to do another one. So now I'm going to bring a leaf in just here. So wetting with my round number 10, bringing the paint in with my round number 6. I want this to become a leaf shape. So I still brought out another leaf, but I've got a leaf next to it now that I've painted in a positive way. I've painted the actual leaf. If you don't quite get it, do not worry. It takes a long time to fully get negative painting. It's just learning it as you go along. It adds lots more light and atmosphere to your work. And then what I'm going to do here is wet above the leaf I've drawn. And then I'm going to bring in a little bit of the green on that bottom edge. So that's bringing out that leaf, but I've wet further than it needs to go. So that won't create a hard edge there, it will just stop and soften in. I'm going to paint this leaf that I've done in the background positively. So a little bit of water. A little bit of the green. Make sure that I bring it all the way in there. Rinse my brush off, dab it off, come into the grey. So I get some of that dark within there. So I've got another leaf here and I would like another one there, but I'm going to dry these off before I do that. Okay, so that's nicely dry. So I've had a hairdryer accident, and you can see here I've had a nice splatter when I've been drying that with a hairdryer. It's always good to bide your time and let the paint settle, and I haven't done that. So what I'm going to do, I dabbed it off as it happened, but I can still see it subtly, is show you what I would do to try and lift that out. So this is a wet brush, it's my number 6, and I'm just very gently agitating the surface. It's good to know how to try and fix these things because it happens to the best of us. I've got a bit of clean kitchen towel here and I'm just dabbing out. I may not be able to remove it all, that's fine. It's as long as I can soften it in a little bit. There's ways and means of it not showing up as much. Okay, so that's it. It's faded in a little bit. I tend to not just do the line, do a bit further so that it settles nicely. I'm going to come underneath this leaf here. So this is still with my round number 6. Just create another leaf here because I want this one to stand out. It's got a lovely glow now. So that's a little bit of water gone on. And this one next to it needed to be dry for me to do this one. Otherwise it would have just blended together. I wanted that edge there. So this is that same green that we've mixed up when I'm painting in another leaf, and that's bringing out that edge there. In fact, I'm going to take it off the edge of the page, and then I can come along with the darker grey just underneath, and you're getting that nice shadowed effect. Get a nice edge in there. So the ways and means now to continue to cover that up is to add a bit more background colour. So above this leaf, I'm going to do similar to what I've done over here. So I've wet further than it needs to go. I'm going to bring out the leaf here. Then I'm also going to take some of this green through where I've had that little accident. And then you will never know. I'm going to dab a few little bits of blue in there as well. So it's just giving it an extra dimension in that bottom section. So I'll dry that off and then we'll go on to the flowers. Okay, so that's nicely dry now and you can hardly see that at all. So if I had not had that accident, you wouldn't have seen how you can do that to cover it up. So I pride myself in showing you everything, because no artist works through something perfectly, even when they're experienced. It's about knowing what to do with it when it goes wrong. So we're going to come on to the flowers. I'm just going to get a wash of colour on them. Sometimes with flowers I do individual petals. This one, because the flowers are quite pale, I'm going to show you a different way of doing it. So I'm taking a bit of water on. What I am going to do is leave a fine gap, because these are overlapping, so that they don't join together, the water doesn't join together. And then I'm going to dab into the gamboge yellow. The primroses that I am doing are going to be yellow. You can get white primroses. These ones are yellow, most definitely. So I don't mind leaving little bits of white. I haven't been that precise with my water. Little white highlights will work wonderfully well. This is just giving you a base for each of those flowers. Then I'm going to take my round number 6 and I'm dipping into the gamboge yellow neat and the rose madder. What I want is a fairly pale orange. There's my tester. I've got a nice orange there. This is nice and thick on my brush. And I'm coming in around the centre, which I haven't wet. I haven't wet that centre. Because there's no water on my brush and the paint is nice and thick, it's not going to go too far. I can concentrate on getting that nice marking you get on a primrose petal without it flowing too far. That centre circle is nice and dry, so that's staying nicely defined. if it goes too far, mine hasn't, but I will show you what to do. You rinse your brush, you clean it off, you dry it off, and then you push the paint back. Don't dab. If you dab, then you just end up with white marks. So you don't dab with kitchen towel, you push the paint back, you use a damp brush, a damp, nearly dry brush to put that on. I'm gonna swap now to a detailer. These are still nicely, they've got a nice sheen to them, so I've got plenty of time. Though this bit, it's not essential for you to have the time. So I'm dipping into the cobalt blue and the Gamboge yellow. So this detailer's a number 2, it's a size number 2, and I'm looking for a green. And that green I want to be thick enough that it's going to stay put. You see, I've got very little water in there, but I do need it to paint. What I don't want is for it to be too scratchy. So that's a bit too scratchy. So take a little bit more water in. You see me dipping into the water. What I want is a very fine circle, because there's little water on the brush. This isn't moving too far. It's not the end of the world if this is dry, but it's quite nice if it is still damp, because it just does start to soften in a little bit on that outside edge. Okay, so I'll dry those off. Okay, so they're nicely dry now. And so we're going to mix some shadow colour. I've got my round number 6 and a dab of water. I am going to twizzle my palette around. This looks like it's mucky, but it's not, it's just stained. I've got a whole video on how to remove stains. I've just not done it on this palette. So I've got a little bit of the blue and a little bit of the rose. Purple is a great shadow colour. What you want to do is make sure that it's quite a nice pinky purple. So we don't want it to be too blue. Too blue tends to look a bit green. So that's nice, and you can see how watery it is. I've just used those ones that we've done in the original mixers. So then with my round number 6, I can come on and I'm going to run down the centre line of each one. Then I'm rinsing my brush, dabbing it into clean water, taking a little bit off. It's wet enough, and what I want to do is just touch and soften in. So I tend to just dip into clean water. Now what I am doing is pushing the brush against the paint and pushing the brush down so that one side of this is soft and one side is hard, and that works really nicely for shadow. Softening in is a fairly hard technique to grasp, so I'll show you what to do if you're struggling to grasp it. So on this one, I'm going to go there, 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 there. Rinse my brush, make sure it's lovely and clean water. Then I can just paint the petal in between. I'm just going to paint that bit there, paint that bit. This one, I'm going to do the whole petal. So the whole petal then means you've always got a soft edge. What I also want to do is come in underneath that edge, and I want to leave that hard because that's going to show as a hard shadow underneath that primrose that's overlapping. So then we've got a few bits in here. Nice clean water, just dab off a little bit so I can just do that petal there, wet that one. I can wet this one, And this is just then naturally softening it in because you're wetting a whole petal and those edges are softening in. Okay, so I've dried that off nicely, and then I'm just going to pick up some of the yellow and just following the line of each petal, popping in a little bit more. This will hang together as a bit of shadow or ruffliness on each of these petals. So this is a watery yellow, so it's nothing too vibrant, and just an odd few random dabs will work really nicely. You can use more of the purple to do this, but you want to keep the freshness, and it's hard to keep the freshness when you're new, so keeping it to the yellow just works quite nicely. Okay, so I'll dry that one off and take the tape off. And there we go, so it's all finished. It's a lovely, simple primrose scene, but it's really effective, and it's showing you several floral techniques that you'll be able to build on through the series. Please do like, subscribe and share. I will be back with more florals over the next coming weeks for beginners, and I will stick to those same 4 colours, so you'll be working to learn how to use those 4 colours through simple floral scenes. See you next time.